Here's the basic premise to this movie.
Oh my god, look, everything's coming apart. Oh look, there goes the rock.
Pretty accurate, if I do say so myself.
What is up, everybody? RandomRandomMan here, bringing you my review for San Andreas, which stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Carla Gugino, Alexandra Daddario, and Paul Giamatti, and it's directed by Brad Peyton. Now, the plot follows Ray Gaines, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is a helicopter rescue pilot from the LA Fire Department as he witnesses the biggest earthquake ever to be seen on the western front of the United States. And he has to rescue his wife, Emma, played by Carla Gugino, and his daughter, Blake, played by Alexandra Daddario, from all the impending chaos. Now, as a bit of a joke after first hearing about this movie, to my surprise, it was not based off of one of the greatest video games ever made, but of the actual fault in California for which that said game is based off of, as it's the premise of the movie of when it finally cracks and everything goes crazy. Now, disaster movies are actually hit or miss with me in terms of their execution. For one thing, I did enjoy The Day After Tomorrow from Roland Emmerich, but then again, I did not like 2012 from the same director. But now it's Brad Peyton's turn to take this format and put it his own spin on the disaster formula. But does it work? Let's run down the whole thing. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is pretty much likable in any action movie he's ever been in. He just brings a certain amount of charm that he carries with him in any role he takes on. They can't just help but root for him in anything he is in. And he's definitely one of the best parts of the movie acting-wise. He brings his A-game physically, and he definitely gets a big thumbs up from me, as he does give a very good performance here. Paul Giamatti is also in this film, and he is actually my personal favorite of the cast here. He's very sparingly seen throughout the film, and he never meets The Rock's character, but I'm gonna say that he brings a certain amount of technical and scientific background that is really supposed to be needed for this movie, with such a convincing execution that I just think that his character was pretty nice in his addition to this film. Carla Gugino as The Rock's estranged wife does not necessarily bring much to this movie, but she is serviceable in her own role. And now Alexandra Daddario. I'll admit, she's a very beautiful looking actress, but yeah, she's terrible here. She is very nice to look at once again, but I do not think that she has the certain amount of acting capability to make this role of a daughter caught in peril and her daddy has to save her too well. It's very, very, very conventional, and it's just so annoying whenever she has to scream and just be in danger a lot. There are other supporting characters in this movie as well, such as Ian Grufford, who plays nothing more than the very generic and stock boyfriend character of Carla Gugino's character, and The Rock doesn't like him either, and he's just fodder for the camera once the disastrous effects do come in. But there are also two characters of worthy mention here. They are played by Hugo Johnstone Burt and Art Parkinson. They play two British teenagers who are brothers, and they get wrapped up with Daddario's character. And those two boys were actually much more interesting to watch as they interacted with Daddario than Daddario herself. So those two are also pluses in the movie. But other than that, other than The Rock and Paul Giamatti bringing their A-game and being the best performances throughout the movie, they are shining stones in an otherwise very low-profile cast. I didn't mention much of the plot before, and there's really nothing much here to go off of after I just mentioned the brief synopsis in the intro. But yeah, that's really just a setup to get everything else going. Giamatti's character once again does spew out exposition whenever disastrous effects do come in, and the San Andreas fault does start to give weight. And it's very interesting, to say the least, to see how the terminology goes behind it. And I think a lot of it is correct, I would say. But in execution, it is very unrealistic looking. Now, to go off of more positives about this movie, the spectacular special effects are really a wonder to watch. They are superb. I got a little worried at first in the beginning, which had a scene that developed with a car rolling down a hill, and that special effect on it really looked very bad out of a video game, but the effects did get better as they went along, and they were very eye-catching. Oh, and by the way, I did see this movie in 3D, and while I wouldn't necessarily say to rush out and see it in the format if you're going to see San Andreas in any way, but I wouldn't say that these go to waste, as there are some nice visual moments when they do come if you see this movie in the format. But alas, there are some problems that go back to the writing itself. There are too many, too many, I cannot stress this enough, too many cliched and coincidental moments that allow for the characters to either A, get out with barely any scrapes or bruises on them, or B, come together in a very unrealistic manner. Now, of course, the idea of the San Andreas falling apart, literally, and having a bunch of destruction go about is already far-fetched enough, but to have the characters that we're supposed to follow be involved and come out way too cleanly is just a step too far, in my opinion. Now, these are disaster movies. They are supposed to be more involved for the spectacle, but even then, I wanted a little more substance out of the characters. And this also goes into a big emotional aspect of the movie that does have to do with a dead character. And it really doesn't come in until the end when a big moment does happen. And it's very much spread out throughout the movie. And yeah, that didn't really make me care much for the characters, other than the fact that The Rock is involved and Paul Giamatti have separate turnabouts in order to get the movie going along. However, the spectacular special effects do add up to some very glorious set pieces that do happen. Of course, the earthquake actually striking throughout California, and a tsunami that does impend towards the end of the movie, and they are very eye-catching to see, despite being way too unrealistic once again, but disaster movies do that, and they have the tendency to do so whenever they are made. I will say that all this does come together to a movie that can be seen as a guilty pleasure kind of thing if you look at it on that level. But even then, if you look at it in another way, the special effects do make it one of the better looking disaster movies I've seen in recent memory. And I wouldn't say it's on the better side, but this movie does amount to a time where if you want to see this movie on a raining day, which coincidentally that's how I saw this movie, you'll get enjoyment out of it, but I wouldn't necessarily say go rush out to see it. My final thoughts on this movie are that The Rock and Paul Giamatti give the most believable performances here, the spectacular special effects are glorious to watch, and there are some fun set pieces here to go about once the destruction does get going. But the all too ridiculous and predictable script adds up to very cliche and two coincidental moments that add up to me going, what? I'm going to say that this movie really also doesn't bring too much into the disaster movie genre. And there's really a been there, done that kind of feel once you do watch this movie and you've seen a bunch of other disaster movies from the past decade or even further back. I will say, if you expect movies like these to have substance going in, then I would steer clear of San Andreas. But I'm going to give it a cautious recommendation to those who like disaster movies and just want to have a big, fun, stupid time at the movies here. And with all the special effects and all the other stuff that go about here with the action, I would say this would please some people and this will not please others. I, for one, still would maybe know what you are going into if you're going to go see this movie. My final verdict for San Andreas is 3 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of San Andreas, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.